Good morning and welcome to the Chesapeake Regional Chapter of the Maryland Tech Council's and Anne Arundel Community College's program, MedTech and the Future of Medicine and how it fits into our innovation ecosystem. Thank you, Anne Arundel Community College, for hosting today. I'm James Gibbons. I'm the chair of the Chesapeake Regional Chapter, also known as the CRC, and we are the community tech and life sciences organization that helps tech and life sciences make those connections and find those resources to move their businesses forward. We offer connections, resources, great programming, such as Barbecue on the Bay, which we had over 170 people show up even in a blustery, rainy evening. So that was a win. But at any rate, we also have started what's called the GovCon Forum, and that is for members who want to program around government contracting. We are also informing the Eastern Shore Forum group, which is our first geography-based group bringing CRC programming to the Eastern Shore. Last, we are excited to introduce to you the launch of our newest group right here in this room, the Emerging Industries Group. Yes, not only do we have a world-class panel here for you today, but today also serves as the launch of a months-long project of CRC members looking to find a program where we're exploring nascent technologies out here. Members such as Trish Farrell, Manel Martinez, Rob Collins, James McCubbin, Greg Stone, Angelo Thalassinides, Jesse Alton, and I, we really want to bring cutting edge technologies, and this is this exploration to this group. In short, we'd love to see how emerging industries fits into this ecosystem here in the Chesapeake and perhaps even beyond. You can expect several initiatives to come online in the next few months. Look out for a panel on AI, happy hours, unique programs, and partnerships. A lot is happening here at the CRC, and we want you all to be part of it. Allow me to introduce today's moderator and our panelists. Our moderator, Jesse Alton, is a product strategist and open source maintainer with a focus on metaverse and AI. He is the founder of Alton Tech, Inc. and co-founder of Magic ML, a platform for developing advanced autonomous AI agents. Most notably, they incubate metaverse projects and foster collaboration through interoperability. Jesse's work extends to serving as co-chair of the Open Metaverse Interoperability Group, as a solutions architect for Fearless, and as an adjunct professor for MICA. Jesse is enthusiastic about Maryland entrepreneurship and is helping to shape the trajectory of our emerging industries. Our panelists, Dr. Eduska Lawrence. Dr. Lawrence has harnessed the magic of science and the boundless wisdom of industry to champion patient safety by ensuring that medical innovation bring healing, not harm. As an entrepreneur, innovator, and holder of 2 patents, she brings unrivaled experience and expertise in medical device product development, regulation, and quality. Founder of Genius Shield, a regulatory and quality compliance solutions company that de-risks and shields cutting-edge medical technologies, accelerating their safe and effective journey to the global market. Genius Shield proudly holds the woman-owned small business certification and stands as an esteemed partner of JLab's Resource Hub, the prestigious Johnson & Johnson incubator. Dr. Lawrence brings a wealth of experience and expertise to the realm of medical innovations. Having spent nearly a decade at the Fortune 500 medical firm Stryker, she led a global R&D team in the development of craniomaxillofacial implants from concept to global commercialization. Her pursuit of knowledge led her to conduct doctoral research in biomaterials at the renowned Cleveland Clinic Foundation, and is a prolific author of scientific publications. Her contributions have earned her prestigious accolades, including a Forbes feature, the Stryker Innovation Patent Award in 2017, and the Cleveland State University Women in STEM Award in 2020. As an invited participant of the 2020 United Nations Women and Girls in Science Assembly, she stands at the forefront of driving positive change in the industry. Having left her native Venezuela, she holds degrees in aerospace engineering BS, mechanical engineering MS, and a doctorate in biomedical engineering. Her left and right brain are constantly in harmonious battle. When she's not launching genius medical solutions, you may find her practicing yoga, meditation, capoeira, or traveling the world to attend tennis Grand Slam tournaments. Dr. Fernando Vidal-Vananclocha, founder of Persona Biomed and IGEA. Dr. Vidal-Vananclocha is a renowned figure in the field of precision medicine, biomedicine, and technology innovation. Dr. Vidal-Vananclocha brings more than 30 years of research experience in translational molecular medicine and has been the founding scientific director of several translational research centers and biotech companies. He has served as an associate dean for research and international affairs in several medical schools in Spain, and as chair of the organizing committee for international scientific meetings in the field of molecular cancer research. As a research director, Dr. Vidal-Vananclocha has led international programs on molecular diagnostics and therapeutics for cancer metastasis and immune inflammatory diseases. His discoveries have greatly contributed to a better understanding of cancer cell regulation in a clinical context. He has over 200 scientific publications and over 7,000 citations. He is president of the Precision Medicine Committee of Madrid College of Physicians, as well as research professor of molecular medicine at George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences. As the founder of Persona Biomed and IGEA, he is spearheading groundbreaking research and development initiatives focusing on the intersection of medicine and technology. Most notably, his work in precision medicine is on the frontier of the future of medicine. Mike Binko, AKA Binko, sees innovation and entrepreneurship as a launch fuel for healthy ecosystems and is passionate about celebrating those with the courage to start one up. Binko is a serial entrepreneur, innovation ecosystem builder, venture founder, data scientist, and brand hound ideator. He has managed corporate strategy, operations, corporate ventures, development, finance, analyst, investor, media relations, and sales marketing for public companies, as well as high-growth startups, and has raised more than $2 billion in equity funding via the global capital markets. Binko is co-founder and policy advocacy chair for the Startup Champions Network, SCN, the continuation of Startup America established to support inclusive innovation entrepreneur ecosystems. Since founding SCN, Binko has led initiatives for deal flow mapping, venture capital, portfolio innovation, policy legislative advocacy, ecosystem metrics, branding, and sponsored teaming with the Kauffman Foundation, Revolution Ventures, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and T. Rowe Price. Binko was an early leader in Startup America as co-founder and CEO of Startup Maryland, a top 3 Startup America ecosystem right here. His core program includes Start One Up Roadshow, Raise Your Game Bootcamp, and the Angel Academy. Binko holds 2 honors degrees from James Madison University and the Innovation Management Graduate Program offered jointly by the University of Maryland Clark School of Engineering and Smith School of Business. He has instructed on venture development at University of Maryland, MIT, George Mason, George Washington, Johns Hopkins, Virginia Tech, and other universities. He is a business evaluator for NIST, NSF I-Corp, Sherpa Mentor, and an accelerators contributor to the Wall Street Journal. Ivan George is the administrative director for Mystic at Johns Hopkins University. He's responsible as an assistant administrative director for both surgery, Mystic, and anesthesia critical care medicine, or ACCM. In his ACCM role, he's responsible for operating room operations for more than 115 operative locations on the main Johns Hopkins Medical Campus in Baltimore, Maryland. He has been involved in simulation for over 15 years, having been part of operating room of the Future initiatives and the College of Surgeon Accredited Institute inception, a central program designer, managing leader, and founding member of the nationally globally recognized simulation centers. Mr. George has authored over 100 abstracts, publications, and presentations, as well as authored and created numerous published medical arts graphics and multimedia productions. Mr. George has been granted patents for surgical, automotive safety, and educational devices. Notably, he co-chaired the American College of Surgeons Global Virtual Grand Rounds, bringing together major medical institutions and or simulation departments of over 46 major countries, over 19 time zones, and has advised those fields for domain leaders and luminaries. Recently, he's been named the chair of the mHealth Medical Program Committee, where he helped author a medical track for the India Mobile Congress in 2019. Currently, the effort is the biggest gathering of worldwide experts from computerized biological systems, 5G, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, smart cities, and startup domain that have been brought together over 30 countries, seeing over 60,000 participants and 5,000 CXOs in a 3-day event. Again, thank you all for coming. Please enjoy the discussion, and please kick us off, Jesse.
Right. Is everyone able to hear me? I've got show notes because I'm very chatty. If you ever met me before, I'm chatty. So I'm going to be reading a little bit. And I'll keep my welcome. Is this still on?
Yes.
It is? All right. So first, thank you to AACC again for hosting us. I'm actually a former Radcliffe Scholar myself. So it's a pleasure to be back here learning with each of you and talking about Maryland startups. Let's see, the story of precision medicine is an exhilarating journey, starting from the foundation laid by genomics, maturing through the evolutionary impacts of artificial intelligence, and now poised to redefine the future of healthcare. The pioneering work in the field of genomics, such as the Human Genome Project, initiated by NIH in 2003, provided a beacon that illuminated our understanding of what truly makes us human. This understanding has been instrumental in honing a new, more precise approach to healthcare, rendering it a booming $83 billion industry with an asterisk, projected to escalate to an astounding $250 billion industry by 2032, with another asterisk. The interplay of technology has transformed precision medicine into an intriguing field. Artificial intelligence, once a concept limited to science fiction, has made an indelible impact, offering predictive analytics and facilitating unprecedented leaps in gene sequencing, new drug discovery, and companion diagnostic testing. See, as we venture farther, the growth opportunities seem limitless, particularly in areas like oncology and new drug discovery, which will be further discussed by our esteemed guests. As we move forward, it's compelling to observe the confluence of Eastern and Western medicine within the ambit of precision medicine. This convergence, coupled with the contributions of healthcare IT firms, diagnostics companies, hospitals, and pharmaceutical giants, suggests an expansive scope and a promising future. We're here today to explore this exciting frontier together, to understand what precision medicine means today, and more importantly, what it signifies for our future. So let us begin this journey together into the fascinating world of precision medicine, a true testament to the exhilarating union of healthcare and technology. So today our panelists are going to address the following topics: breaking into MedTech, investing in MedTech, making an impact within MedTech, and precision medicine, the convergence of technology, how medical development is driving the evolution, and more on how we're witnessing a paradigm shift in what is actually possible with precision medicine as a result. Afterwards, we will open up for a Q&A. So if you have questions, please consider writing them down. We will make time for that. And then we'll have the panelists' closing thoughts. See, these panelists are key observers in what's happening in MedTech and what is actually driving the changes in these emerging markets. So let's get started. All right, my first question is for you, Dr. Vidal Vanna Clocha. I should have practiced.
Yeah, very good, very good, very good.
Given your background in biomedicine, precision medicine, and technology innovation, can you share some examples of recent breakthroughs from your organizations, Persona Biomed and IGEA, that you believe will significantly impact patient outcomes? And you have 4 minutes.
I have a few slides.
Absolutely.
So, Jess, thank you very much. And thank you to organizers. Definitely, we are transitioning from a traditional medicine into a precision molecular and genomic medicine, definitely. But this is not something that will happen tomorrow. It's something that will involve our fall generation and probably a few more. And you have to understand that precision medicine is very important for everyone here, because we will get better cures and we will prevent diseases, we will live longer, we will save money from the budget in healthcare system, and we will make business. It's a great opportunity for everyone. We will be healthier, but this has a cost. Invest now for saving tomorrow. But invest now is important because investors will definitely make a lot of money, because every time we develop something in the precision medicine world or field and is helpful, is beneficial globally. And we are in a global world now. And that's why everything we successfully develop and validate for clinical use and show benefits is something huge. So this is just a slide to show you that we are in a time where we are understanding how we get sick, how disease develop. By understanding how disease develop, we, of course, understand who is more vulnerable, who is at higher risk, who has inherited the predisposition to diseases, and who has a bad life and will be at higher risk than others. For insurance companies, this is very important. So for everyone, it's important to that. And this has ethical implications, of course, but also is a lot about the budget. Doesn't move. So this is just a formal definition on what precision medicine is about. Is our clinical practice always for diagnostics and therapeutic solutions, but based on these genomic and molecular biomarkers and targets that everyone we are talking about, because the identification of biomarkers in our health, in our disease, and potential targets for therapy, this is changing, is revolutionarily changing the way to do business for biotechs, for bioengineering, and for pharmaceutical companies, because they get much better outcomes. And this is something that doctors need. When we get a disease, the disease generates a response, and we have symptoms, we have signs of disease, and this is what doctors see. But what is underneath is something that we are starting to understand, and that's where the business is, understanding what is underneath, what is determining why somebody has a very severe disease and some others don't. And these differences make also the difference in business, in budget, etc. No? So in the 21st century, we are starting to practice precision medicine. The first medical specialties doing that were oncology. But now, very fast, many other specialties, chronic inflammatory diseases, endocrino-metabolic diseases, asthmatics, people with cardiovascular problems, with dementia, with neurodegenerative disorders, a lot of medical specialties are now starting to use biomarkers and therapeutics based on target-oriented drugs. And this is very important because, as you see, just watching TV, every time you switch on your TV, you have a lesson of the target-oriented therapies, because you see many examples why diabetes, why chronic inflammatory disease are better cured with target-oriented therapies. But the history starts around 200 years ago. There were two kinds of doctors 200 years ago. Those who try to identify where the disease is generated, pathologists, and those who try to understand how the disease is being presented, how it is shown. These doctors, pathologists, progressively understood and classified our diseases. And current pathologists, now our current pathologists, those people who try to understand the disease under the microscope and with molecular biology, they are changing technologies because they are now understanding much better what makes the difference in our cancers. And this has implications for oncologists who try to understand which is the target-oriented therapy for our disease. And this, we do that at a multi-scale level. First, at a microscopic level. Second, at a molecular level. And finally, at a genomic level. And this is MedTech. This is all about the combination of more powerful devices for understanding what is underneath in our diseases, and thereafter, what is the kind of therapies we need. So it's this combination in between a colonoscopist who see the disease, the pathologist who scan the genes which are really involved in this disease, and the doctors who use actionable genes provided by pathologists to decide which is the exact therapeutics for us. This is what makes the difference and the cure in some cases. But how close we are to this desirable situation, to this dream, this we are on the way. It's not easy. Every disease is different. And in everyone, the disease presentation is different. So this is why we are still learning a lot. We are even using multiplex electrochemical immune sensors to try to monitor the way we respond to diseases, we respond to therapeutic, and all of this is about technology. The second kind of doctors were the doctors who try to understand our diseases, not looking at the lesions, the location of the disease, but looking at how we express our disease. And here is one of the best examples, the founder of the Johns Hopkins Hospital in the 19th century, a Canadian doctor who established in the USA and create with other few people this hospital, which is now really famous. But the future generations, like this young doctor, are now addressing the most complex diseases, where the diseases are associated to the way we live, to the drugs we take, to the diet we have, and to other comorbidities. And this implies the need of multimodal healthcare analytics, something that need artificial intelligence. And based on the biomarkers we discover and we monitor, and the image we obtain through systems of deep learning, at the end of the day, we are able to better monitor the way we develop our diseases. And we need a large amount of devices in order to provide all the details on the way we monitor disease. Wearable devices are in the market, and artificial intelligence and supervised machine learning techniques for biosensing, biometrics, diagnostic prediction, therapeutic guidance are all now in the market. But the way they are in the market, they are just starting, because this is statistically based. And unfortunately, we need a more real picture about everyone. And that's why precision medicine is transitioning from this big data analytics to a more accurate system in which each data is related to our specific data in our case. And this is what has involved the generation of a new kind of doctors, physician scientists, who are doing a translation from the bedside opportunities for healthcare improvement to the labs, to the biotech companies or to bioengineering companies, for example, and then back with solutions to the bedside. This bench to bed and bed to bench is something that has been practiced mainly in the USA from the beginning. And this has been very important because there is a generation of doctors in the second half of the 20th century, mainly from the USA, and have really provided all the tools that now we are using. And the government in the USA has been the first who really create a mission statement on precision medicine. This was created by Barack Obama's administration 7-8 years ago, just that. And they envision a transformation of the healthcare system, but also of the industries, to the point that now 1/3 approximately of the drugs now being developed and applied for FDA approval by USA pharmaceutics are all target-oriented. But how close are they to clinical applications? Well, this is a long way for everyone, but they will be. And this will transform the pharmaceutical industry, but also will be the traction for many other industries. If we try to understand this complex picture, we see in the middle precision medicine. But precision medicine is the overlapping intersection of three very important foundations. One is the molecular diagnostics and therapeutics, which has been generated by the mixture of biotechnologies and personalized healthcare practice. The second one is the clinical bioinformatics and biosensing on the top, which is the intersection between the biotechnologies and the MedTech and digital healthcare and analytics. And the third one is the digital medicine, healthcare software, and radiogenomics, which is a way to better predict our disease development. So that's all for me. And the only thing to close my presentation is just to remember that in this field, many players have to put things join together. The first, the biotechs, the bioengineerings, and all of the people who are developing the necessary clinical value for diagnostics and therapeutics. But the other side is the artificial intelligence, is all the analytics, and all of this is now being merged. So altogether, we are creating a very complex and interesting field. Never before has been created this field, so intersecting so many players, and now we are here together also to discuss. So thank you. And
thank you, Doctor. While we get the next set up, my next question is for Dr. Lawrence. Could you discuss one or two of the most impactful devices that you've been involved with creating? What challenges did you face during their development, and how did you overcome them? Thank you.
Is this working? No. Great. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Yes. All right. Thank you so much, first of all, for having me here today. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here, back to Maryland and MTC. I very much appreciate this ecosystem. And I'm a very visual person, so to answer this question, I just wanted to have a couple of slides. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in many exciting medical technologies, but I have to say that one of my ultimate favorite and most impactful, in my opinion, has been the Stryker pediatric mandibular distractor, which is a, if I can go to the next slide. Is it with this?
No, click on that.
Okay, which is a device that I the patent on, fully developed and launched globally while I was a Stryker. And this is me receiving the Stryker Innovation Award for this medical device. In very high level clinical application, there are babies that are born with undersized lower jaws, which medical term is micrognathia. And this is due to syndromic conditions such as Pierre-Robin sequence. And these babies have difficulties breathing, feeding, and eating on their own. So it's a life-threatening condition that requires an emergency surgery, such as mandibular distraction osteogenesis. And here you have a craniomaxillofacial surgeon coming in, makes a cut on the mandible and implants a distractor device that is going to be pulling on those bone segments, creating tension. So the osteoblasts, or your bone making cells, create new bone, lengthening the lower jaw so that the tongue gets to be pulled forward and relieving, clearing the airway. So now the patient can go back to breathing and feeding on their own and correcting all of these issues. And actually the photo in the center is shows external mandibular distractor, which is a little bit barbaric if you ask me, and they're very uncomfortable for the small patients and higher risk for infections due to the many pins through the skin. And so I developed an internal mandibular distractor. And this treatment can last about 3 months, and the final outcome, it's a baby with a normal sized jaw that is gonna go and have a healthy, normal development, hopefully. And this is the main features and benefits of the pediatric mandibular distractor. This we're all covered in my patent, and this is just a cool 2-minute video from the Stryker website. So it's public information if you want to learn more. You can go to it. One of the main features is this anti-revert mechanism that I'm going to talk a little bit about it later. And I think that's the end of that video. All right, cool. And these are the indications for use, intended use for the pediatric mandibular distractor. And in terms of challenges, we have plenty. And I'm only going to talk about a few, but mainly the basis of our challenges was around the fact that we were developing a medical technology for neonates, which data, it's non-existent. It's unethical to work on baby cadavers, they're not available. And so that was a challenge on its own. And then we had the surgeons who had absolutely no clue how much, what kind of forces were exerted on these devices. And you would think, well, how much force can a little baby, generate? But actually, they have a the sucking reflex, and they generate tremendous amount of dynamic forces on those little mandibles. And so we had to be very creative and come up with some 3D models. I was involved in the costume cranial implants project. So I knew that we had some pediatric data, not neonate necessarily, but 1-year-old. And so we were able to extrapolate and create some decent models around that. So that's how we overcame that challenge. And then another challenge was that, so baby's bone is more like cardboard. It's not like adult's bone that is well mineralized. And so a screw attachment was very difficult. And so a screw loosening was an issue with this treatment, which can jeopardize the entire treatment. So the way that we eliminated this risk was by design. So we designed the anti-reverse mechanism that hopefully you saw in the video. And that's how we were able to overcome that challenge. And another one was during our VOC, or voice of customers, speaking to our surgeons, we learned that these devices were breaking at the foot plate. The foot plate are, it's hard to show there, but because they were all welded to the body of the distractor. And so it was a must for the PMD to not use welding. And so, but when I send my first design to Germany, they were like, this is impossible to make without welding. And so, and I'm like, well, those are interesting words. I was sitting in Mahwah, New Jersey at the orthopedic, with the orthopedic group, and have met the manager of operations. And I went to Todd and said, Todd, I need to make this device without welding. And I've been told that this is impossible to make, so we need to make the impossible possible. And what do you think? What are your thoughts? And so he took a look and he was, I think you can use wired EM. And right there, he caught me my first prototype that then I got to take to Germany and be like, okay, guys, this is how we're going to make this happen with wired EM. And so, and then we had things like a plant explosion that took half of my manufacturing process. And when I was submitting to the FDA, there was a US shutdown. And so, and for that, I just double up on my yoga and meditation practice. So thank you. Microphone.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. All right, this next question is for Binko. From a venture capital perspective, what are the key qualities that you look for when investing in a MedTech or precision medicine specific startup? What advice can you give to emerging MedTech companies seeking investment?
Thank you, Jesse. And first off, I want to say, I'm the most pedestrian credentialed person up here, so I'm just delighted to be in the company of this panel. But that's a tough question. It's like asking which one of your kids is your favorite. But there are some factors that play in. And being a data scientist and coming from the cybersecurity camp, we're heavily laden with engineer type PhD mindsets that are very forceful in their ability to vocalize what they know and how they know it and how they're credentialed in it. And I would say, in coming to life science, bio, pharma, therapeutics, it's a new sector for me as an investor. We'll talk about some things on why I was able to get there without that history or that credential. But I think some of the things that are available to anybody in this space that wants to be an entrepreneur in this space is it's a little bit more of the soft skills that you might want to develop and nurture for yourself. And when I say that, it is, a lot of folks that kind of bring these types of innovations to market are super credentialed by peer review, academic license, published, and same thing on the engineering side. There are also industry groups that observe and kind of monitor the validity of the science or the research. And I say that is wonderful. If you are credentialed in that category, you are already out the gate ahead of most of your peers. And you can certainly document with metric data how well credentialed you are. So I'd say that's a starting point. The next is you kind of have to get out of your own way. I'm brutally honest with this. With our cyber PhDs who kind of like to be in the dark room and don't want to be around people, but they're in the zone and they can really do that penetration testing or those algorithms or defend against ransomware. If they want to get funding and take it forward, once you start bringing in outside resources, it's no longer your intellectual property and your credential. It is a venture. And I would say the first skill that I really look for in the founders that make them investable is they're willing to learn, number one, but that's a little too trite. But they're willing to kind of surround themselves with people who know what they don't know. And it could be as simple as business acumen skills. And I'm also going to bring an example of a company that I invested in that had a really good result, but they were chugging along for about 6-7 years. And then they brought in a CEO that has Silicon Valley experience. And that perspective opened up their opportunity to new investors, including myself and some peers in a syndicate, that really helped take a clinical trial through a critical phase. So I would say the soft skills, but also kind of, be willing to kind of challenge yourself to allow others to be a part of your opportunity, and really separating yourself as an individual and your talent and your credential from the venture that you might want to be bringing to market and the ability to take that to scale. We could talk about some of the other factors that once you kind of understand that, what are the business acumen skills that investors look for? It's really customer market fit is absolutely front and center. Really you don't have to be a financial analyst, but putting a model together that shows that you credentialed to understand the market, you understand the channel on how to get there, you understand what the customer's discomfort is or challenge is, and what they might pay for it at scale. And then how are you going to kind of build an operation that can efficiently go after that opportunity when competitive landscape might emerge. It's daunting to kind of take the entrepreneurial journey, but it is very rewarding if you can kind of add those skill sets. We kind of look at, a lot of folks look at, oh, I want to be a founder of an innovation company and take it to market and exit, and then I'll go sip, cocktail drinks on the beach somewhere. Exit is great, but it shouldn't be the mission or the charge on why you become an entrepreneur. Fernando, you mentioned that these innovations are going to have impact way beyond the medical outcome, and I agree with that 100%. I would also, of the three items you listed, the molecular diagnostics, the clinical biosensors, digital, the fourth that I would add is really, it allows you then to take data from all of those three and create lifestyle choices that you have control over. And I think when folks say generative AI is going to put people out of work and all these innovations that are coming on the data side, data scientists, I'm a little close to it, but I was an early employee back in the days in the early 90s of the birth of the internet, becoming a military platform being decommissioned and available to consumers and businesses. And I say, everybody said the internet is going to put people out of jobs. And I look back, that's 30 years ago, everybody uses the internet for their job. It's just going to change the way we do work. And I think it's also going to change the way that healthcare is presented to the patient, and that the doctors and the operators and the institutions actually have an opportunity to understand the patient at a deeper level and engage with them at a more personal level, but also challenge them to take a little bit more ownership in what they can in a medical outcome or health.
Absolutely. Thank you, Binko. All right, this next question is for Mr. George. Could you expand on the challenges in MedTech landscape, particularly in Maryland at institutions like Johns Hopkins, and specifically share how some companies have managed to bridge the acceptance chasm?
So first, I'd like to thank Jim and Jesse and the Maryland Tech Council for having us here and for being with the STEAM panel. That's a good question. I actually took a few notes, so I hope you don't mind if I look at it. I come from I should set a little context here. I happen to, there's a quote that says, context is actually universal law is for lackeys and context is for kings. And so for me, that has great meaning, and it will for you all as well. I'll buy anyone who can tell me where that came from afterwards a coffee, but I wish it was Shakespeare. I guess to answer your question and to give you a little context, so I have been on the innovator side. I actually put this into three categories. There's someone who comes up with an idea and says, can I make something? Can I develop something? That's one side of it. Then there's can I take that concept and move it to market, which is a whole different. And if you're on my side of the fence, I don't know if you can still hear me or not, there you go. If you're on my side of the fence, you're sitting in value analysis committees, or you're sitting next to surgeons or anesthesiologists who are saying, or administrators or risk managers or supply chain folks who are all looking at this from a different ROI, a different value proposition for them. So a lot of times you will have a device, an innovation, a system, a platform, whatever term you want to use, and in your mind, it has a singular use. And that may be true. If I sell a an amazing pancake flipper. I'm only marketing it to people who are making pancakes. I don't need to get it by mom, dad, risk management, anyone else. Market will either take it or not take it. But in the healthcare environment, it's totally different. I don't need for the pancake flipper. I don't need Emerald or think of a name of somebody. I don't need a famous person to endorse it. But in healthcare, I need evidence-based. It's evidence-based practice, evidence-based science. So I can't just use a standard physician. I need a thought leader, or it might not go through. I need evidence, or it might not go through. And it's a really sad environment in some ways, because a very famous surgeon friend of mine gives this amazing talk where he says, hey, I tell you what, let's do a double-blind randomized trial for parachutes. How many of you are going to be the ones that jump out of the plane without the parachute, right? We just know certain things work. So as you move forward, I guess my perspective on this, before I read off my little list I just generated, I wanted to make it clear I am a tech guy. I happen to be very much into the technologies that we've heard of and how it's presented here. So what I'm going to share with you in these quick bullet points are for you to think about as you move across that, in the adoption curve, we talk about early adopters, late adopters, we talk about that chasm of doom where you just don't get it into market. These are some thoughts when you get to that. When it comes to acceptance or adoption, the region and where you're doing it matters. So if you're trying to get something in Asia, a third world country, it has totally different implications than it does here in the West. Most of you are aware of that, some might not be, but if I want to have a procedure done in India and New Delhi, I'm looking at fee for service. I'm walking into South America with an IV bag and my own IVs and paying for what I want, and going up to the surgery to have it done, and I'm kind of bringing some of my own materials. There are varying examples of that. Here in the US, we rely on insurance. And so region matters. Here in Maryland, it very much matters. So Jesse, you asked me a question about Maryland. In Maryland, I don't know how, let me ask you, how many of you all are aware of the concept of an all-payer state? Let me see a show of hands. How many are aware of the Medicaid, Medicare waiver? Okay, I see some, I don't see others. So I'll quickly tell you the story here. You'll have to go to the Maryland Hospital Association and look it up. The average, and I'm giving this away, the average hospital margin around the US can be anywhere from 4% all the way up to 15%, anything over 8% for a hospital, not practice, but for the hospital, anything over 8%, we feel like the hospitals are sandbagging. But they're usually on average, a few years ago, the average was Franklin Index had it around 4%. In the state of Maryland, over the last 10 years, we're part of this grand experiment, apolitical experiment, where the margin has been -1%, 0, and only up to 2. This year, I think we're going to be 0. And that is set by a state institution called the HSCRC. And I cannot tell you how many major companies come to us at the hospital and say, hey, I've got this safer device. We're going to save you money. And or think, well, this is better than my competitor. And they're like, why aren't you buying it? And when you look at our overall budget and you say 2% of that has to cover everything, or 1% or none, it then gets us down to where we're only thinking about what's essential. I have 20-year-old cautery devices and 115 ORs. How am I going to buy that new maxillofacial system, for example, which is a great system, I'm familiar with it. But there may be a competitor to some of these devices that we're already using. And in my ecology, I may not have safety issues. Maybe my patient selection is different. Maybe my surgeons are better trained, less better trained. So these impact how we work. Now in the all-payer state, again, an example, an appy or a chole or gallbladder or an appendectomy may cost $1,500 at Hopkins. It's going to cost $1,500 at Hagerstown. It'll cost $1,500 all over. If I want to lower my rate by 1%, let's say I'm Hopkins, I want to lower my rate by 1% and bring everyone to me, the state won't allow it because, if I look at 2014, 42% of all hospitals in the state of Maryland we're running in the red. That's why a lot of this consolidation occurred. And so if I were to lower my rate by 1%, I could bring all the people who can pay from Western Maryland and I could collapse those hospital systems. So do we have socialized medicine? Yes. Get the politics out of it though. It's important. So these things I'm telling you because it should be in these type of thought processes, whether it's from Maryland, Connecticut, Massachusetts, or California, or wherever, whether you're trying to sell to Mumbai or whether you're trying to sell to Dubai, you should be thinking, what are my strategic goals, plans, and what, can I scale in that environment? I talked about evidence-based practice. And this whole thing relates to corporate strategy or entrepreneurial strategy for marketing in the modern healthcare environment. There is definitely a difference between healthcare practice versus academic medicine versus innovation. You all will come up with something. I had someone who was passionately engineering this hand washing system. I'll never forget. Came to us while I used to be at Anne Arundel, came to our chair and said, this is a great system and would have, significant savings. And we went back and looked at the infection rates relative to what they were trying to do, and we didn't have them. Now, that might have made a difference for someone else, and they were only trying to scale to 1 or 2 hospitals. They were literally calling the hospital next door. They hadn't considered how are they going to get out quickly. And it's sad to say, large systems, if I had been at Hopkins, I know exactly around the executive table what's going to happen. There you go, well, where else are they? Well, why has it been 10 years for them and they've only been in 2 or 3 hospitals? I don't think we want to invest in them. That is the kind of thought process they have. So you really don't want to waste your first, it's like in a meeting, you don't want to waste your first 30 seconds with someone. You want that to be a meaningful, interaction. Your sales, your marketing, your messaging should have the same impact or you will not get through at least major medical centers. Content, context, and messaging. That goes to the messaging portion, but I want to share something about content. I've already shared context, what I think about it. In the fields I'm connected with, surgery and anesthesia, in particular surgery, a lot of times people come up with, hey, I've got a tool. How do we apply it to your area? Here's the sad thing. We don't know how many times. If I were to look at, if you are familiar with a Nissen fundoplication, it's where we take the top of the stomach and we wrap it and we make a anti-reflux barrier. And I said, how are people doing it around the country? They're following, if it were a football game, they're following the same X's and O's, right? But if I told you the guy that's literally 5 blocks away or 5 miles away has better outcomes than anyone in a 300-mile radius, which is true, you might go, why? He's following the same X's and O's. Well, I could say he's the pioneer. Worldwide, he's the pioneer. He works at Anne Arundel Hospital. Maybe he's done more. Maybe his judgment's better. The sad truth about it is we don't know. So in certain fields, tool tissue interaction, where the person is gazing, where they're looking, what's the stance of the person? It's a little different than your world, biomarkers, or in your world where we're looking at fixed, rigid structures. There are places in medicine where we just don't know. And so part of the struggle is getting the content. So here I am, someone who was a big advocate for AR and VR, XR when it first came out many years ago. And I wrote one of the papers on why it doesn't work. I felt bad afterwards. I thought, what am I doing? And I'll go to conferences nationally and people will go, hey, here's this new glasses. Med students can wear it and they can look in the OR and, they can see everything there in the OR. And the question we have is, that's great technology, but why am I spending $30,000, $40,000? Can't I have them watch a video? Can't I have them walk in the OR? There are reasons why you want to have them walk in the OR, but there's studies haven't been done to validate why. So if you're just trying to do an engineering project, that's different than a practical translation or application, and that has to be considered. So as engineers, as innovators, we get, and I know this because I've done my own, we get enamored with what we're building, and we forget there's a practical application of that. Timing matters. There are places I was involved with a major robotics competitor to Intuitive and had it come out 2 years later. And the economy had been in the right place, had investors been in the right state, we would have gone through. And you all have seen this. Timing does matter. And some of it you have no control over. You should walk away and go, well, I'm thinking like the big kids. And at least you're in the right place. hopefully you haven't invested too much in it at that point. The culture of innovation and the target audience, you really need to understand, like I said, when you make a sale to a hospital, you're not just selling to the surgeon, you're not just selling to the anesthesiologist, you're selling to the administrator, to the risk managers, to the supply chain folks, sometimes to the schedulers, sometimes to the OR nurses, and everyone has their own value proposition. And there's a rule, at least in my world, you've seen one OR, you've seen one OR, not seen multiples. I think the last 2 points is management of scarce resources to efficiently ensure safe and optimal outcomes. When you're working with a hospital, unlike the pancake flipper, unlike open industry where the market can deal with whatever it's dealing with, hospitals are essentially, at least in the US and around the world, more so, they're an attempt to manage very scarce resources or individuals. And that paucity of those resources, trying to manage and juggle what they have, be it money, be it funding or whatever. And in that are opportunities. So for example, here we are talking about computer systems and genomics or whatever, and believe it or not, I just need to figure out how to schedule my ORs and my surgeons and anesthesiologists and nurses. And it can be that deep machine learning could look at 10 years worth of scheduling and go, we have a way to give you BA/BI and efficiently put your people where they are to better manage those resources, or to better manage the return on investment so that our financials come back better. So it doesn't have to be at the cellular level, the organ level, it can be at that organizational level. We try to keep the patient safety and outcomes at heart at all times, but to get there, we have to be concerned about the others. So I hope these are things that you think about and that they're meaningful. Like I said, I'm presenting the other side of the fence because in my heart, I love hearing what I'm hearing here and what I've seen. These are amazing innovations and what it took to get there. So I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you. So for this next question, can you mute all your mics for me? There we go. We figured it out. You're bringing up a really good point, right? Especially make sure it's feasible. When you're working with really intelligent people, it's super tempting to focus on feasibility, but there are two other elements, right? Viability and usability. And so I love that you brought that up. All right, so this next question is going to be kind of rapid fire style, just to give you guys a forecast of what's coming. I've got 2 questions for the whole panel, and then we'll move into Q&A. We got started a little bit late, and this may run a little bit late, so I do apologize if this affects anybody's schedule, but thanks again for being here. Get your questions ready. All right, we're going to do this rapid fire style. I want to know what comes to your mind first. So this question's for the whole panel. Considering the rapid development and implementation of MedTech and precision medicine in recent years, how do we balance the pace of innovation with ensuring patient safety and regulatory compliance?
All right, how long do we have, Jesse? You just said we're related. Oh, God. So this is my world, and this is indeed a major challenge. And I don't have all the answers, but what I can say is that, every single part of the ecosystem, every single individual must have at the forefront patient safety. That's what it comes down to. And I'm actually going to take a quick poll on the audience. What do you think is the main reason for the highest number of FDA recalls? Your options are number 1, design, risk, or testing. Raise your hand who thinks it's design. Risk?
Yeah.
Okay, testing?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. The answer is design. 75% of FDA recalls are due to design, which means that folks are not spending enough time developing their product specification requirements and design requirements, speaking to their surgeons and your users, whomever your user is, and actually the majority of that percentage is on software devices. And we are in the middle of the artificial intelligence revolution. And we have the FDA guidelines on software are like 50 years old. So there is tremendous effort right now at the FDA to catch up with the innovation. And so, this is why we have the Digital Health Action Plan and Center of Excellence at the FDA trying to release new guidances and creating pre-certification software programs and tailoring the regulatory framework to AI, because it's just very different from our traditional medical devices and regulatory framework where, with AI, it's constantly learning, and our medical devices or traditional medical devices are fixed with one functionality. So now the regulatory framework needs to accommodate for adaptability and ensuring that that constant learning process accommodates or ensures patient safety as well. And you also have data quality and bias. So now the regulatory framework is going to ask the manufacturers, the inventors to ensure that we have high quality data that is representative and that there's bias detection, not only on the development side, but also on the deployment of those AI systems in the healthcare ecosystem. And then we also have diversity in clinical trials, which is a big one for me, and women's health. It's no secret that women have the highest risk for secondary effects to medication due to the lack of female representation in clinical trials. And so there's tremendous effort right now and a great energy behind women's health. There's a women's health program at the FDA now, and they're trying to understand better how medical devices perform on women and how the unique needs of the medical device regulation, associated with women's health. And there was actually a law that was passed and signed in December, where now anybody who wants to bring to the market a drug, a medical device, or a biologic, they need to have, they must submit a very robust diversity action plan for each of the clinical trials. Back in the days, it was just like, oh, we got one diverse person. Okay, good, we're good to go. So not anymore, which is great. It's great news because then that improves how we, everybody deserves to feel safe when they're taking medications, when they're getting implants. And I think lastly, there are two big issues that I see in our ecosystem, and that is number one, the tremendous regulatory compliance knowledge gap of new startups and innovators, which is not their fault. It's just if you haven't been there, how would you know? But and then how that impacts patient safety. And the second one is that we've made the regulatory language so complex. It's like speaking of black holes. And so that means it's not accessible. And I think it's all of us within the ecosystem, especially those in regulation and quality. And I take that very personally myself as a carrier of that knowledge to be able to ensure that we're sharing that knowledge and what I call de-jargoning regulation, and being able to level the playing field. And so, for me, my commitment is I've been doing that through my company's newsletter. If anybody's interested, just talk to me afterwards, but it's completely free, because I feel like we need to democratize, the language. We need to ensure, and this is how we contribute and ensure that new medical innovations are created safely and that are actually healing and not harming patients. That should be always our ultimate mission, protecting patients.
Thank you so much. Oh, no, that's great. Very in-depth.
Yeah, no, you gave me 1 minute, but I had to let it out.
First of all, no entrepreneur will ever take 1 minute if you give them 1 minute. I would be shocked. So do we have any quick follow-ups to that question before we move on to the next question? Yeah.
Yeah, I can say that those are brilliant. I mean, it gets back to the point of context, and I'll share something about AI. Obviously, this audience, I'm sure, is very knowledgeable about it, but I have one example from a talk I gave recently. It had to do with talking about airline simulators. And again, we're not talking about genomics, but it talks to how AI works. Just do not forget. I gave a talk to a large group of folks, and I showed them where the first commercial simulator was from, I want to say 1938, I can't remember the exact one. And it goes on to say that the FAA approved that simulator in 1938 or 39 as well. I let the talk go on before I went back to point out something to them. The FAA wasn't even developed back in 1938. That portion of the talk, I intentionally let an AI chatbot come up with it for me. And no one caught that. And so what we do have a problem with is it's back to the junk in, junk out, right? It goes back to using AI to look at crime and crime statistics, and you don't know what bias material is getting in it, which is why it's so important that vulnerable populations, as you said, are included in this, whether it's women or whether it's folks from certain demographics otherwise, or regions of the world, they're not well studied, and we just assume they are, and they're not. There's not the money placed, especially in women's care, there's not the money placed in it that should be. So as you look to utilize this stuff, you have to be good stewards of what you do. The regulatory environment is both positive and negative. We can't do without it. It's what we have. And so from a hospital standpoint, we get to a point where we trust what we've got is safe because it cleared. But then we have to be vigilant and check for what's going on. I'm forever reminded, for every solution is a whole host of unanticipated consequences.
Post-market surveillance, yeah.
Right, and so that really is how we all play a part of that, but it's trying to make the best of what you have.
That's great points. All right, well, this last question here from me will be for the panel, and then we'll move on to Q&A before we wrap this up. So my final question for you all, and this is for each of you. We'll try to keep the answers concise. I know it's hard, but let's try to say what comes to the gut first. Given your insights and experience, where do you see the future of MedTech headed in the next 5 to 10 years? And what advances are you most excited about? Like picking your favorite kid, right? There you go. We'll start with you, Dr. Vidal.
Yes, I think definitely we are on the way, but as our panelists said, regulatory affairs, cost effectiveness, benefits are ahead of us. And in the way we are developing innovation and translation into clinical applications, definitely we need to be very cautious in all of these parameters, both cost effectiveness, which can prevent the use, the adoption, because it's not cost effective, even though it's a beautiful innovation, or it's not as safety as it is expected. And that's why it's so important short-term diagnostics. Laboratory developed diagnostics for, in the broadest way, to better understand who are the candidates, the ideal candidates for any solution, who are the most vulnerable people for application of this potential solution, who are the candidates for a beautiful target-oriented therapy that need to be cured with this. Because not always, you may know that when a woman is treated with a target-oriented therapy for a breast cancer, the response to these beautiful drugs is not 100%, could be 25, 30, 40 at the most. So why we fail in 60% of good results? Because we don't identify the ideal patient for the drug. And that's why we fail. That's why regulatory affairs have to emphasize in better understanding our biological profile, our biological way, how we develop and respond to diseases. That's why short-term diagnostics in the broadest way is the most important. And we cannot rely just in big data analytics, because the way data are accumulated in computers is extremely variable and not always consistent from one hospital to the other, from what has been tested to provide a personal profile. No, that's why we are at the beginning. That's why it's so important to believe in better profiling people for anything, for a biomaterial, for a drug, for a follow-up level in a disease, etc.
That's great. So it sounds like better decision-making.
Yeah.
And what about you, Dr. Lawrence?
Just only give me a minute. So, I'll keep it short as well. I think that for me, there's like three main categories. And the first one, obviously being AI, there's, no way around it. It's very exciting, and I'm very interested in how it's going to enhance medical devices and therapeutics and its combination with precision medicine, because we're not one size fits all, and the ability to be able to tailor treatment to a specific patient's genetic makeup and health needs. It's the most holistic approach that we can have. And so that's very exciting. And then my second bucket would be nanotechnology and bioengineering that includes tissue engineering and regenerative medicine. We are going to be growing our bones and organs from cells. And I can't wait until we are done putting metals and polymers into our bodies. And my third bucket, which is probably my favorite, and it doesn't get a lot of hype, but acoustic medicine. We already use ultrasound. We're very familiar with it for diagnostics, but a lot of this, like high intensity focused ultrasound has tremendous potential in cancer treatment for, like very precise ablation of tumors and tissues in a less invasive way. So I think that's hot. And then, all of the non-invasive brain stimulation and sound therapies for treating neurological diseases like Parkinson and depression and chronic pain. And so I think acoustic medicine, it's amazing. And I'm actually right now working with a company that has one of, at least for me personally, one of the most revolutionary things I've seen, where we know that this universe vibrates at a frequency, and cells are no exception. And we've known for years that cells communicate. And so in plain English, what they've done is that the way that I explain is that they've created a cell microphone that kills all the noise and amplifies the cells speak in a way where you can very accurately and repeatedly distinguish from a healthy cells versus a cancer cell. So a 7-year-old can tell you whether or not you have cancer with this innovation. And that's super exciting for me, and what makes my soul sing, as my bingo would say.
Sounds like a revolutionary alternative to
Very
chemotherapy.
cool. Yes.
Yeah. Bingo, what excites you?
Oh, man. A lot of people kind of say, well, Bingo, we're in a challenging economy, difficult times coming out of the pandemic. I honestly look at these types of times as nothing but rife opportunity if you're looking in the right location. And I think, everybody on this panel represents, like, there are great minds thinking about solutions to day in, day out challenges, healthcare, medical, your lifestyle. I've come to it. I only have a minute, so I won't go into the example of AGT, which I was prepared to talk about, of kind of how did that clinical trial phase 1 on their HIV cure happen so efficiently. And there's a really interesting innovation story behind that. So maybe another conversation another time, Jim, if there's anybody wants to ask a question about it, I'd be happy to share it. But as investors in that opportunity, the combination of their use of generative AI, which they had been working on for years, 3.5, 4 years, they've only been into their clinical trial on the HIV cure, a little over 2 years now, with great results they just announced 2 weeks ago. They'll be spinning out that cure as its own public company. Great result for us as investors, but to me, it really took Jeff Galvin being brought in the tractor beam as a Silicon Valley successful serial entrepreneur, understanding data sets and the software and coding mentality of gene and cell therapy is exciting to me. I also relate to that from more the data side. And it's, it's code, compile, evaluate, repeat, right? And if you have a team that knows how to apply that to gene and cell therapy for bio, life science, pharma therapeutics, what if, right? We say, what if? I kind of say some of these innovations are going to kind of help us with the why not? Why not? And yes, the regulatory scepter is there and for good reasons, but often, challenges the entrepreneurs and the ventures to do it at scale with the resources. One thing I'll also say is, where else is a better place to do this than right here? We talk about space and where you're going to do it in your location. So not just having, FDA, NIH, centers, Health and Human Services, great federal labs, resources, regulators, policymakers, but I've gotten involved with NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology. They've been working on an AI working group and a reference architecture for 3 years. It's in the news now that how pervasive AI is, but an agency in Montgomery County has been working on this for 3 years. I got involved with them on cloud computing and cyber. They worked for 5 years on that just to define what cloud computing is for the federal government. And then the agencies would have to map to that. That also spawn out a National Center for Cybersecurity Excellence, where every industry adopted the same standards. That's happening now for AI. So I'd say anybody in the life science, biopharma, therapeutic space or medical, get involved if you're here, because it's literally, an hour from here. And they have working groups probably on AI once a quarter, probably more if you get into a working group. And that also helps you with presenting yourself to potential outside investors who might say, you're very credentialed in your academia, research, or institutional life. How else are you getting involved with your industry side of this application? And being on a NIST working group, even if you just listen in and never really contribute, you can say you're on that working group. And then peers on that group, you might want to invite into some of your data. So that's interesting to me, is the AI applications for, particularly gene and cell therapy, because I've gotten involved with it and drawn in the tractor beam. I'm more curious than understanding. But I think it also has the ability to draw some people in that aren't in this sector as investors to give confidence and perspective.
Yeah, thank you. They have this saying, it's not who you know, it's who knows you, right? It's the second step of that. Putting yourself out there, collaboration is what breeds innovation. It's what breeds exaptations or unforeseen adaptations that you didn't see before. So I'm glad you touched on that. The importance of being a part of the community. Mr. George, what excites you?
So I'll, all the things you all have mentioned, I get to see. It comes down the pipe with our researchers. In our own lab, we're working on xenotransplant, which is kind of cool just to be around. The thought that we can grow organs from other organisms and implant them in totally separate species has significant meaning. I think what excites me is kind of different, and you asked it also in the context of 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. So when I look at it, I think as entrepreneurs, you're going to make the first step. And if you do it right, you'll make money. But when I think about it, I do remember 2 stories. I'm always full of stories. I remember 2 things that just to keep in mind. For Stryker, for example, when they came out with their clinical VCR that we used to use, that was 10, 15 years after the consumer market got it. When we got 4K monitors, we all have had it at home since what, 2002, I think. They're just now entering our hospitals to use it because we don't build to 57. I'm no disregard to the pathologists, internal medicine folks, but I'm going to use the surgeons as example. We don't build monitors and systems for 57,000 surgeons. We have 330 million consumers in the country. So part of me is a little bit not discouraged, but aware that what you do may have to play on what's already going into the consumer market. So I see things coming 5 years, 10 years down the pipe, not right away, but you have to be at the front end of that. And if you're at the right place, you will turn it into something big. If you can become part of groups like Stryker or J&J or Medtronics, your opportunities become even bigger right now. If you find devices or systems, platforms, whatever, that have immediate need, then you can go to the front of the list if you do it right. Another thing that excites me is with AI and deep machine learning and natural language ontology. This is the whole computational science effort. Taking into account those issues I talked about earlier, if you extract that from it, what is really cool is that it's been socialized very well. Up until now, you really had people who were in the biomed field or who were in the, who were former physicians or nurses or someone in healthcare who goes, I see a problem, I can solve it. Now you have a kid at home, who's using, illicit.org or ChatGPT and going, my aunt had this problem, and they're looking things up and they're potentially finding solutions for things that no one had found, or they find correlations. So I think what excites me is that we have a whole new generation who may find solutions for things in ways we didn't think of, who are more adept at it. And I think that there's going to be an acceleration of the curve for solutions that are found. The question will be, how do we deploy it in a safe fashion? It's Jurassic Park. Just because you could do it doesn't mean you should. But anyway.
Thank you. All right, so now we'll turn to the audience. If you have any audience questions, if anybody here would like to ask a question, if you have one ready, feel free to raise your hand and I'll come over to you with the microphone. Oh.
Thank you for a stimulating discussion today. Two things. First of all, the MedTech area is not the only area where people come with solutions in search of problems. We see that a lot. And it's an expensive way to fail with a company. As far as AI goes, AI is a marvelous tool, especially for creative endeavors, including writing. The opaqueness with which we see the input data that the algorithms are trained on and how the algorithms works against areas like yours, because you absolutely have to have that. You have to have that data quality, high data quality, highly curated data sets, and you have to really understand what's there so that you can trust the outcomes. Because many times, as you've seen with Chat, GPT, BARD, and others, you cannot trust the outcomes. You have to really look at what they're telling you and verify what the outcomes are. Nonetheless, it's going to get better, right? But with, number one, the complexity of the inputs, as you have so far so carefully detailed in your very informative and complex charts, AI adds another level of complexity to all that, and also another level of complexity as far as FDA approval. And so, especially in your area with using AI, that, as my business partner Hector here just observed, that you've got to have more careful innovations in how you regulate AI use in these areas where people's lives are dependent upon it. And so that's a lot to unpack. And so I'll just stop now and have your comments on that. Thank you.
Definitely, AI is great, but it's also true that one of the short-term most important needs is a very successful interpretation of what we determine, for example, in patients. Our algorithms try to interpret. The way they interpret is based on the information, the strongest information the algorithm needs for reaching a final successful outcome, no? And therefore, artificial intelligence is one of the most important companions for better understanding human beings. When we test for on PCR for COVID-19 viral disease, it's simple. It's just a very simple determination. But when we want to interpret a cancer and decide on based on the cancer you have and you care, which is the therapeutics is most appropriate, is very complex. And that's why it's so important. Probably the investment now is needed in optimizing the usage of artificial intelligence in the biological interpretation of where we are, where we can be, and how we will get the solution, no?
I think I just wanted to add to that, like to your point with the data quality, right? And that's a whole other layer. I was just at a panel at JLabs New York, and there was I can't remember his name, but he had a very good point that, and this is all exciting what we can accomplish with AI, but at the same time that it's all about the data quality, those data sets, and that in the hospitals right now, that's all over the place. Like grabbing data from here, from there. And that's one of the biggest challenge. And until we get our docs straight there, that a lot of these innovations are not going to progress as fast and, where they should get. And so that's the main challenge to overcome that data, collecting the data and that data quality. And then you have the other side of, are the softwares locked or unlocked? A lot of what the FDA has approved so far are locked software, because unlock, that's a whole other animal, right? And so that they're adapting and changing their behavior. And so how is that going to, obviously it's a higher risk patient. And so a lot of things to think about around that.
One other quick thought. So on point. It made me think of something that we're working on, another agency across the river, National Science Foundation. So research-driven innovation road mapping. And that concept of innovation roadmap is a real thing. So like to point out, Frank Leone in the audience here, he and I are working on some things around innovation road mapping. Like there are certain gateways that you can put in kind of a waypoint structure, that there are certain things that you can do in the early stages of ideating, validating, and curating an innovation on your own with your own credentialing, like I talked about before. Then when you start to think about this can see and manifest an opportunity out in a market, identifying the operations, the amplification, the acceleration of that ideation on terms that matter to the market and the customer or the investor and the results that they're looking for. Then when you start to really amplify and take it out, what are investors looking at? So there's a waypoint structure that NSF has incorporated, other groups like Kauffman Foundation for Entrepreneurship, that is fascinating and it's applicable. So all of this is really about applied innovation. That's what matters in industry. And that is what can take it forward. So I would encourage you all to kind of, start to maybe learn some of those soft skills outside your own credentialed capabilities and abilities. And then, I kind of like to say it, and it's the book I haven't written yet, is know what you know, but know what you don't know and surround yourself with people who do. That's the entrepreneur's best mantra. So I also wanted to thank, Jim, MTC. They actually just had a call with Kelly and Pam and Wendy and some of the teams on kind of how to activate this innovation, road mapping in different sectors. And I think the chapters are really bringing it home with emerging industries. Jesse, you are on the front lines of this and you're going to be experiencing this long after I do. So thank you for kind of taking the flag and moving it forward. And I just, once again, I'm delighted to be with this panel of experts and provide a little bit of perspective.
Thank you so much. So we've got time for one more question. We're going to cut out some of the end that I had planned, but would you like to? Yes, please, Mr. McCutcheon.
I'd love to ask this question. You guys have done a wonderful job. All of you are noted experts, and you have taken us from, the wonderful opportunities here to the regulatory nightmares here, apparently. some people are saying we're facing like the big bang of computers and science coming together right now. Some people are saying, oh my God, we're at the golden age of MedTech. Everybody's rushing in here. But at the same time, the complexities, the size, the problems, the systemic problems with the system itself is, do you believe that there's a place for emerging markets, small businesses to compete here, or are we facing a value trap as investors? Is this a lousy place, or is this truly a great place? I'm walking away a bit confused. I believe, of course, in precision medicine because it's coming up with targeted ways to save money. Many of the new technologies that have been spoken upon are wonderful. But will the system allow it to thrive, or are we facing a situation where only the big can compete?
To be fair, that's a great question. And our researchers face that daily. Our innovators that come to us, our large companies that come to us face that daily. I cannot tell you how many conversations I have about that. So despite the way I'm wording it, let me start by saying, is there opportunity? Without doubt. Is there something that we can move forward with? Absolutely. I think there are, we're not homogenous in healthcare. We're very much Swiss cheese. So it depends on where you land. You may land somewhere where there's great opportunity. I think in the genomics fields, I think in things like devices, like your ortho devices, there are great opportunities. If you ask me about tool tissue interaction and robotics and automation, I don't think we're there. And I think I've said it before, and I am jaded compared to, I'm sure, everyone else here. And so I would ask that you keep that in mind. But I look at the self-driving cars, right? Look how long it took. Look how long it took for folks not to have an elevator. They used to have elevator attendants. It was 75 years before they got rid of elevator attendants. Just people didn't trust that a person could, in their own, run an elevator. Now, yeah, I know that in the early days they controlled the speed and opening and closing, but my point is that everything has its natural course. So I'm not at all saying don't invest, don't get involved. I think there's such a large space that you'll find opportunity. I just think you have to.
It's like, don't bother. In fact, my takeaway is, wow, is this marketplace of value?
It goes back to so I will answer that. I'll be direct. I think it's based on what you are developing, what you're innovating. If you try to get to me today and say, I have a new BABI system that does an EMR, I will tell you the truth. You are not going to get into most systems. If you're not Epic or Cerner, you're just not getting in. Enterprise level folks are going, we're not taking a chance to have you compete as a small startup against a company that's been around 20 years, that's deployed around 90% of the market. It's not going to happen. However, if you said, I've got an add-on, a plug-in, something that will allow me to engage my patient in a way that plugs into Epic, you absolutely could get in. So I want to be careful. You're right. I am painting a dual picture here, but it is very much dependent on the research you do to determine if there is a market for the item out there. Even in the, absolutely. But again, you targeted, that's right. It might have been asked, I don't know how Stryker came up with that, but that's a very small population that has that issue with the jaw. It's low volume, but we get into the issue of, is it the right thing to do? Right. So sometimes the right thing leads to where you need it to go. Sometimes if you do the math in the long run, it works out. The other part of the question is how long will you sustain your effort? And do you have the ability to do it? It's like playing a game of poker, right? I mean, I may have a winning hand, but if I can't keep up with the ante, I'm out. And I've seen it happen with big companies. You all have too. So it's kind of a loaded question you're asking me, because I don't know if the person that you're talking about has an ante large enough to stay in, or do they have the right hand? It really has to be, in my mind, a small company can come in, but it has to be well thought out. Who are they partnering with? Do they know what the hurdles are in front of them? Are they going in naively, and are they really looking to go from concept to market, or are they just trying to develop something? And if they're just trying to develop something or proof of concept, that may go nowhere, no matter how great an idea it is. So I apologize to anyone here. You're absolutely right. I kind of paint a picture that it's difficult. It is difficult. If you're coming to a large enterprise like us, you're not going to come in as a small startup unless you know the right people, unless the problem space, maybe. It could be that you don't know anybody, but you have something that meets or addresses a need that we haven't had a solution to. So I'll leave you with one final example. I had a big company sitting next to me, your comm division, tried to sell us 800, when I was at University of Maryland, tried to sell us $800,000 worth of fiber optics to do telemed in the OR. And we were using ISDN cables or something before. And I remember thinking, we're 5 years away from going wireless. Why am I going to spend that? And how does it benefit my surgeon? At the end of the day, it didn't do anything for them. So even big companies come across issues where the engineering aspect of it is, this makes sense. This is great. It's the next technology. Right.
Startup or early stage company in MedTech.
So this is where, again, it's a very nebulous answer, but as directly as I can be, I'd say it's really doing your research, doing your homework, doing your due diligence. Just having a good idea is insufficient. It's not that you're small, it's not that you're large, it's that you really understand the problem space. If you don't understand the problem space, if you don't have advocates, now that's where thought leaders, KOLs, SMEs, and medicine make a difference. So I think if I were starting up a company in healthcare, and I've tried to do a couple, the concept of having a key opinion leader or thought leader next to me makes all the difference in the world. So at that point, it does not matter if I'm large or small. That's sort of my opinion, because at that point, I get the support I need. It may not be money, that'll come. It may not be that I have the research data, but they have enough contextual understanding to say, this is a viable idea. So yes, small startups, entrepreneurs at the very beginning stages can absolutely get in. I'm just saying you have to do your homework. You're not going, this is not a cakewalk. It's not like the incredible pancake flipper. I can go out and find young lady out there, sorry for your name, and I can say, prototype me a pancake flipper. And we can do that. And it's either the market will either bear it tomorrow or not. I can put it on, get money to put it on QVC or whatever, and it'll die the next day. What you're going to go through in here is far more complicated. There are regulatory issues, there's acceptance issues. So I think there's high reward for high risk, just like you're investing in stocks and bonds. So if you're a small company or a small investor, that's where you are. I mean, that's my opinion. I don't know if you all feel the same way. You kind of, you call me out on it. You're right. As someone who's sitting at Hopkins, 115 ORs, a lot of times, as much as I want to be the guy in the room supporting the initial startup company, I know full well my CA.
That where you're not going to have a big bang of computer science because the institutions itself won't allow it.
I'll put it to you that it's already happening. It's been happening
And
forever. It has been
it's
happening.
happened
That's
repeatedly.
part of what the
Yeah.
market you're entering into.
Market
So
dynamic.
that's the market
I'll
dynamic.
give an example.
Please.
So Vita Health, small startup out of Howard County, focused on adherence capabilities with some devices, but also a very mobile comms friendly. Tried going after institutions as their first market. Investors were interested because of the scale. They realized they had to pivot and they needed to find that alternative market. So private sector home health became a very attractive market for them. The profitability of the adherence, having the data on handheld phones, but also other systems and biosensors that they could add to it, API that data into an analytics tool. They're establishing themselves very well. It's not the best example to some of the things that we're talking about that institutional health and medical is going to be mapping to over the next decade or two. But it is an example where they pivoted and took their customer discovery to heart and created a great business around it. So It can happen. It is challenging, absolutely. And
That one concerns me. So to say end user is a little difficult to say. If I'm a sales rep right now, I would not go, like I have a digital platform I want to get out to my surgeon. I'm not who's going to be my primary user. I can't sell to them. Currently in the healthcare system, that surgeon may have zero say in what they're using. I'm going to have to sell it to administration who may not have any visceral connection to how it's used, right? Or I may have to sell it to risk management to say, hey, this is the, the marginal benefit of using that item. So the message to entrepreneurs wanting to step into this field is, again, you have to know your audience, and your audience is not always the end user. The audience is the organization and its individual groups, buckets within that have their own value propositions that need to be hit. And to get back to the kind of whole point, even if we got out of MedTech and we got into just regular tech cyber, I'm sure the field is littered with companies that tried to do something that failed. I think you're going to find the same thing here. And is it tougher? Yes. But I can think of many companies that have been able to get in and do things. Their failure occurred not because they didn't invest or do anything. It had to do with, I can think of a company right now, for example, I'm a consultant for them. They didn't understand how to market in the US market. And they wanted X amount of sales, couldn't get it, but they never did the studies. They never involved the KOLs. And so here's this brilliant device that I think could change the world. And I mean this literally. And if you want to catch me later, I'll tell you. And it is now dead in the water. Yeah. I do. I do as much as I do with any other sort of innovative effort. I think entrepreneurship is a high risk, high reward area, right? You're putting yourself out there. I'm not talking about the engineer or the developer. I'm talking about someone who's willing to go from concept to market or to take something and move it forward. That takes an effort, a methodology, a discipline. And I don't even know if I have. I look at these folks and I think they've got what's needed. I think collectively in this room, we have what's needed. It is an ecology. We should be, something else since I've got you all here. We should be dealing with advocacy as a group. We should be dealing with legislators in the US are engaged in making scientific decisions and regulatory decisions that are not evidence-based. I could give you a handful, but you'd probably label me as one extremist or another. And my issue has nothing to do with politics. We have an uninformed citizenry that is making choices that are affecting all of you all. We should be at the state houses or at the Capitol advocating for what we want so the pathway is cleared for you. The regulatory environment is littered with just the jargon, and the way to get things through is I've sat through some of these meetings and nowhere near as much as you all have. And they're absolutely right. Now, if you said, can we simplify it? I'd be going, if you simplify it there, I don't know how we get through that as well. I literally have a laryngoscope blade I used to intubate patients with. And I found out 2 months ago, and I've been using these things for 35 years, that the company has what's required by the FDA to create an IFU, instructions for use, right? Some of you know what that is. Found out that I'm looking at this and the items on it are contradictory. They don't make sense. I can't clean this. They're referring to multiple technologies, multiple legacy devices. Come to find out that device is a legacy device. It's waived. The FDA doesn't even cover it. So here I have this critical device for me. I have no instructions on how to clean it. I can't force the company to do it. And it is one of 2 billion devices the FDA has to monitor. And it's unfair to ask them to have to do that as well. Companies have to do what's right and have to solve it in the design phase. So yes. I need my friends here to save me because I think I'm not going to be able to get out of this. I do think it is, but I think it's how you go. The golden age of going from, Europe to America required. Yeah, but it required that. Yeah, help me out here.
All I'm gonna say is, to answer all of this, entrepreneurs are the most investable asset in the American spirit, right? And they will find a way through if it's possible. AI will help them. It'll also smoke out your biases if you're not prepared. So I just think the entrepreneurship side of this is where I see the ripe opportunity and the optimism. Yes, are they going to get railroaded if they choose the wrong path? Yes, it's happened to umpteen entrepreneurs in history. It will continue, but we will have great folks doing great things moving forward and bringing great results to the community.
And precision medicine field is huge opportunity
Yes,
because it's transforming healthcare system.
part of the future.
I do have a comment that I want to make, and I think that this is the points that you guys made. I think the key to this is create collaborative communities that define what the right problems to solve,
Mhm.
put up a backlog of that, include that in the innovation roadmap for MedTech technologies, and be able to get all the different people behind the idea that there needs to be a roadmap, because it's not just about coming up with the right solutions once you understand the problems that need to be solved.
Mm.
It's also about understanding how the regulatory process and the legislative process and the political process need to also change in congruent to enable solutions to come to market that focus on patient outcomes, patient safety.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen by just the entrepreneurs. We need to leverage and get the political cleaned up, the system, the legislative and the regulatory system also need to change in order to enable this to happen. And it's not going to be just entrepreneurs leading it. We need to get the political leaders, the legislative process, and the regulators to come behind and say, yes, we're going to have to cooperate.
Yes, that's why when a pregnant woman delivers a human being, has everything from the beginning, even though it's a newborn. We cannot just say, oh, you have a very good idea, let's put the money there. No, please show me that you have everything is needed to move from your baby stage to the adult stage. That's why we need what this gentleman said from the beginning, a collaborative network around the great idea. No, it's important.
Yeah, you gotta put in the work. You have to, like, for example, I couldn't just walk on to the Baltimore Ravens right now and start playing for them because I really want to and because I'm really passionate. I'd have to hedge my bets, right? I got to put in the work. I got to do a lot of work. I got to make the connections. You can walk in, walk on. It's possible. It's just unlikely. So I think I'm kind of.
Give it 2 years, Jess.
Thank you so much for that comment.
And on the note of collaboration, don't forget, you don't have to go out there on your own. And this is my sales pitch here. The community colleges around the country are here to help access grants, work with you. We're here. So any ideas, please collaborate with us too.
Well, thank you. Jim, you did not let me down with your questions. I appreciate that. All right.
Yeah,
So
fired up.
So obviously, I know we're over time. Again, thank you all for taking so much time of your day to be with us today. I do want to just wrap things up here. So our discussion has really shed light on the remarkable evolution of precision medicine, a journey that traces its roots to genomics and how it has exponentially grown through the convergence of technology. This field is experiencing a rapid transformation due to medical developments, creating an extraordinary paradigm shift in what is achievable. Yet, we also acknowledge the challenges, from limited medical practitioners to cost restraints to regulations. These things may impede this progress. And I appreciate each of you for the work that you're doing to try to advance us as a species. I appreciate each of you for being here for our very first panel. And I will pass it back to my esteemed colleague, Jim, for a closing remark. Thank you.
Let's give it up to our panelists. Thank you very much.
I knew we should have booked more time. I just knew when we got these four together, this is going to be a really healthy discussion. So I'm very, very thankful for all of you attending today. Again, this was a presentation with the help of Anne Arundel Community College. If you guys have any questions on the community college, talk to Angelo. I do believe, Angelo, if we have time, we could do some tours if people want to.
We have with us two of our deans. Dean Bowen Lance Bowen is heading the sciences, and Dean Elizabeth Apple is heading the health side. And we have a brand new several simulation labs that we're eager to show. So at the end, if you're interested in the bio side, Lance, otherwise, Elizabeth is going to help you with the simulation. So thank you.
Again, thank you on behalf of the Chesapeake Regional Chapter of the Maryland Tech Council, and we hope to have another presentation for you soon. Thank you very much.